Thank you very much, and it's great to be here with the League of Women Voters. Cabrini's three basic principles are social justice, academic excellence, and leadership development. A common thread between all those three principles is the ability of critical thinking. Critical thinking is the ability to be passionate and educated about a point of view, to have a conversation with a person about your point of view, but also take a step back and appreciate and possibly try to understand where that opposing point of view is coming from. It sounds easy, it sounds good, but it's not very easy, and it's very complicated, especially when you're dealing with 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds who are just full of fire and brimstone. So we hope as we go forward and with this partnership at League of Women Voters, when issues like this as fake news come up, with the onslaught of social media, and to be able to inform our students, our faculty, our staff of being able to decipher when something's legitimate, something's fake, because regrettably anymore, most people don't go to a second source. They don't try to do research on an issue. Whatever they see is what that is in doubt. But probably within 3 sentences, they probably repost it, and there it goes. But it starts tonight, so hopefully we will get there to a better informed and educated society. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters, I would like to thank Cabrini for hosting this event. And I would like to thank the Radnor League for inviting me to present. I did this presentation, well, a briefer version of this presentation back in September for the Central Delaware County League, and I was one of 3 people on a panel. There were 2 professors and there was me. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself and where my focus was for that presentation. It's going to be similar to this, but I've beefed up this since I'm it. So I'm Ann Mazikowski, and I'm an educator. But my last job, full-time job, and I'm still doing that a little bit, I teach online, I teach teachers online on how to use technology. And so therefore I have this title, Instructional Technology Specialist. And that title is to help teachers integrate technology into their classroom and into their teaching. So, and that's that K-12, not the professors here so much, but that K-12 group of educators. So throughout the presentation, I'm going to be showing you some quotes from those teachers that pertain to fake news. I'm also, as you see, a member of the League of Women Voters. I'm a member of the American Association of University Women, and I am also a member of the Pennsylvania Association of School Retirees. So like yourselves, I'm sure, I'm one of those professional volunteers, you know. I get involved in a lot of different things, and this is just one of them. So, fake news invasion. Do you too want to run away from the super hype 24/7 news? I love this picture because it reminds me of how I feel sometimes, running away. So do you feel like this? Yes? Yeah, right? A lot. Fake news. So why care? This is a quote from Real Research, the Pew Research Center report from December 2016. And I use this quote still because that's just when things were starting to heat up about fake news. You heard it a lot. We're hearing it more and more in the press. And so they did this research report and the impact on us, on Americans. And In this report, they found out that about 64% mentioned that the fabricated news stories cause a great deal of confusion. And when Brian was talking about the critical thinking piece, that's important at all age levels. And the basic facts, the current events, this sense, however, of this confusion was across, which I found interesting, across all kinds of income levels, education levels, partisan affiliations, and other demographic characteristics. And I would assume that's also age groups. So I have been collecting terms, 2-word terms. And a lot of these, I'm sure you've heard. Some of them are old, like rumor mill. That's nothing new. Some of these are a little newer. Crisis actor, for one. The first time I heard crisis actor was after the Parkland shooting incident, when those students were being accused of being crisis actors. But apparently, that's not when it first showed up. I did a little bit of research on that too, and found out that that term alone showed up right after the Sandy Hook. People were talking about crisis actors. Witch hunt, we've been hearing a lot about. And every time I hear it, witch hunt, I think that really refers to me, in my mind, as soon as I hear it, back to old fake news, when we had the Salem witch trials way back when. Clickbait might be one that's maybe new, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means. So there's a few here that we've heard, the alternate fact one, phony issues, and so forth. There's a couple, the one that's digital distraction. I feel that that's even more important today, to be aware that a lot of what we hear is distracting us away from the realities. But my favorite is this one, outrage fatigue. That's how I feel a lot of the time. And I'm not sure you do, but it just hits home. So why care? And again, this is a quote from real educators from the Stanford Graduate School of Education. And in this one, it talks about never have we had so much information at our fingertips. It's really a glut of information. This bounty, will it make us smarter, better, informed, or more ignorant and narrow-minded? That whole critical thinking piece that we just heard a little while ago. Awareness of this problem and our educational response to it. At present, we worry that democracy is threatened. This was sort of interesting too, because again, the date on this was over a year ago. And we're hearing that more. You heard the Sinclair, the stations, the local stations that are being bought up by Sinclair? They have, and I didn't put it in this presentation, but there's a composite of news people using this term, talking about our democracy being threatened. And the irony of that is they're being told to say that. So this report was way before that. The whole disinformation, civic issues, allowed to spread and flourish. And we're going to talk just a little bit about social media and how that happens with social media. I mentioned that I teach online courses, and one of the courses I teach is called Internet for Educators. That course goes into all different aspects of the internet. We start with the history of the internet, and then we start to go into searching strategies and different aspects of safe searching, copyright, and so forth. And every time I ran this course, and it's run for several years, we would get a little bit into, it wasn't fake news at that time, it was these hoax websites. How do you evaluate? How do you know that the website you're going to is good? So January 2017, I built in 2 new topic areas into the course. One is evaluating fake news, and the other one is evaluating websites. And in that course, I use throughout the course a tool that's called Learning Playlists, and this is the URL for those. And the tool is Lesson Pass. And what it allows me to do, because remember it's online, I put in all these resources into a list within this Lesson Pass, and the teachers who take the course go there and they work their way through, and then they reflect on what they learned. We're not going to have the time tonight to go into evaluating websites. That's another whole topic. But we are going to look a little bit at some of the resources that they get to interact with within the course. Oh, where'd it go? Okay. So remember I said I was going to present some quotes from the teachers. So after they go through these resources, I ask them to reflect on what they've learned. So these are real teachers, real educators about fake news. Very true, right? Very pertinent for today. And this again was from teachers who took this course back in January 2017. And they have to make sure that their students are able to evaluate the news in this, again, one of those two-word phrases, post-truth world. One of the teachers found it, wow, eye-opening. All that these sites existed. She didn't realize that there were these sites out there to evaluate it. And again, however, she also found it shocking to realize how much fake news is out there and how quickly people share articles. As Brian just mentioned, they click and it goes out. People don't examine. So I built in a couple of videos into this presentation, and this is a short one from commonsense.org. Commonsense.org is one of those resources that the teachers get to explore in more in depth. It's just a short video about 5 ways to spot fake news.
Here are 5 ways to spot fake news. Number 1. Look for unusual URLs. If they end with .lo or .com.co, chances are they aren't legitimate news sites. Number 2, dissect the layout. Look for grammatical errors, incorrect dates, bold claims with no sources, and sensationalist images. These are all red flags. Number 3, dig deeper. Find out who wrote the article and who supports the site. If this information doesn't exist, or you need to register to get it, then question why. Number 4, cross-check. Use fact-checking sites to confirm information and see whether other credible news outlets are reporting similar news. Number 5, try a reverse image search. If the same picture appears in unrelated stories, you may have a reason to be suspicious. For more media literacy tips, visit us at commonsense.org.
We're going to touch on each one of those 5. This slide is from, again, remember I said I started to put these topic areas January 2017, and this article from the Huffington Post I saw, and I liked the list, and I thought this would be a good one to show 9 points about how to recognize a fake news story. And we'll touch on a few of these too as we go further into the presentation. One of my favorites is read past the headlines. Brian mentioned this too. You look at the title, it's a sensational title. Oh, and people, they believe it. I have to share this. They get angry or whatever it is. You need to read the story. My other favorite on this list is think before you share. Don't just share. Think about it. So more quotes from these teachers. They're not sure if there's a war on fake news or a war on real news. Finding it difficult to have the discussions in their classes. They have students who are coming to their classes with heads full of propaganda, things they've heard on the media, from their families, and they're not able to recognize the difference. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. An example of this is this quote. So how do you address it? They ask, how do you address it? A few years ago, after 9/11, a teacher wrote this example. A student comes, says the whole thing was a hoax. I'm sure you've heard this story before. And it was perpetuated by our government. And the child points to this website filled with conspiracy theories that their father had shown them. So their father showed them, so it must be true. Didn't happen, 9/11. These are the kinds of things that these teachers really are up against. I'll digress a little bit here. I was at a conference in February, an instructional technology conference in Hershey. And I attended a couple of the fake news presentations. And in one, this teacher, wasn't this story, but she related a story that she teaches science. She gave an assignment to her students. One student came back into class and said, my father said this wasn't good, this assignment had to do with global warming. That's fake, that's not true. And the child refused to do the assignment. She was very upset, sad. Whoops, I did it again. So one more quote here. We must help, notice the word help, students to think critically. Help teach them how to break down all the information into something more manageable. This is another list, and I'm going to show you this list. I know you can't read it this way, but I just wanted to show you in the format that it's in. NPR. How many people listen to NPR? Yeah, very good. NPR, On the Media. Do you listen to On the Media? They do these podcasts, and a lot about On the Media, and several of them have obviously dealt with fake news issues. Well, there's this breaking news consumer handbook out there online. And when you go to this site, this list is there. And it's suggested that you print it out, cut it out, and keep it by your computer as a helpful tip list. So On the Media, Breaking News Consumer Handbook. So let's break down this so you can read it, and I can read it better too. This consumer handbook fake news list has a lot of red flags in it. And especially one of those red flags is if you see something that's in all caps and is obviously photoshopped pictures, it's fake. And we're going to look at a Photoshop picture a little later. If there's a glut of pop-up and banner ads, it's pure clickbait. One of the apps I have on my iPad that I like a lot is USA Today. I like it, and I'll go to it and I'll look at a story on it. And after I read the story, if I scroll down on the screen, there's going to be ads at the bottom. They have to pay for it. It's free, right? Somebody's paying for it. And when you look at those ads, and they're usually like fakey looking headlines to me, but that's clickbait. If you look at it and you say, wow, I'm going to click there. I'm going to see what the heart surgeon says I'm going to live to be 100 or whatever it's going to be. If I eat such and such a food, then I might click. So pop-up ads, banner ads, pure clickbait. Check the domain. And we talked about that in the video, and we're going to look at that again in another list. If it has things like .co, it would be .com, .co. If it's .co, you want to be a little leery of it. And an example that's up there is abcnews.com. legitimate site, but .co after it isn't going to take you to the abcnews.com. It's going to take you to a different site. So you need to be aware. If you land on an unknown page, check the About page. I do that when I'm looking at just what I know is legitimate. I still want to look at the About page. I mean, if you go to the league website, you want them to go to the About page, right? And find out what the league's all about. So it's a good thing to keep in mind. Then Google it. If you're suspicious, put the word fake in and you see what comes up. If a story leads to links, you can follow them. Garbage leads to worse garbage. If there's no links, quotes, or references, it's another telltale sign. And verify an unlikely story by finding the reputable outlet. More to the list. Check the date. Social media is notorious for this. Somebody recently sent me a link to something that popped up on their personal computer. That some security software that they were using, they were being told had been hacked into. And they were curious, they wanted to know if this was real or not. So I did a search on it. I found out that actually it did happen, but it happened 2 years ago. So I sent that to that person. I sent them the link to the story. I said, yeah, this did happen to this software, but everything I found out there on the web was referencing stories from 2 years ago. I don't know if that made them happy or not, but I felt I needed to share. And always read past the headlines. We saw that one before, we're seeing it again. Photos may be misidentified by date, and we're going to see an example of that too. And we're going to talk a little bit about reverse image search. How many people have you heard about reverse image search? Okay. And there's a search engine out there called TinEye that is a good search engine to use when you're looking and trying to find out if this image is real, fake, misinformation about it, whatever. Gut check. Remember I said people read and they get angry? If you get angry, it's going to be designed to make you angry. That outrage fatigue. Finally, if you're not sure it's true, don't share. Please don't share. Clickbait. NPR, news story. Podcast, and this person's been on several. Melissa Zimdar, she's a professor of communications at Merrimack College. And back again in 2016, when all this started, she teaches communication. She's trying to reach the students like they're trying to reach here at Cabrini. She put together a list. And it's about over 1,000 websites now. And when she put together this list, she rated these websites on if they were fake, satire, because not everything out there is necessarily fake. It could be satire. Conspiracy, if it has that bent. Extreme bias. If it's just pure clickbait. Hate news. State news. If it's political, again, that rumor mill pops up. Junk science. She also rates it proceed with caution. Might be okay, but And there's also credible and unknown. So these are the categories she used. And this link that's here is a link to a spreadsheet that has these. So I did a screenshot of a part of the list. And I know you can't read those tiny little words, so that's why I put them in bigger for you to say. So 24newsflash.com. It's a .com. might be okay. It's fake. Again, the abcnews.com.co, fake. abcnewsgo.co, fake. The one that really sort of scares me are things like actforamerica.org/news. It's hate. AmericanFreePress.net, conspiracy and bias. And notice in the list, it might be a couple of things, not just one. It could be bias, it could be conspiracy also. And it could be conspiracy and fake. So they're rated that way. So how do you know how to discern if something is fake or not? Again, remember that list I mentioned that I put together in Lesson Pass for teachers? All of these are listed there. Fact Checker, Washington Post. They rate if something is real or not, and they use the little Pinocchio symbol. So the more Pinocchios that are up with that story, the more fake it is. So they rate it with using the little Pinocchio. Snopes.com uses the symbol of this X, the red. And again, they rate it. That's a very good site. How many people do you use this one? It's really a good site because it gives you a lot of detailed information on it. Factcheck.org, I also like. It's Annenberg Public Policy Center. Really solid site to go and check if a story is real or not. And PolitiFact checks and ranks political claims. I don't know if you can see the symbol that they use. They use a meter, a truth meter. And if it's true, it'll be nice green color. And if it's really not true at all, they use this one where it's pants on fire. And when you look at that online, the flames that are coming over that meter are animated. So you really know you don't want to go there. So how do you do that? So say you see a story and you're not sure. You would copy the URL from that story. You would go to one of these fact-checking sites. You would paste that URL into it and click, and it rates it for you. Not hard, but just Brian had mentioned, it's another step. It's another couple of steps you have to do to discern if something is legitimate or not. This one is new to me. Actually, both of these are relatively new to me. Media bias fact check. This is really, I heard this in a video that I watched. I'm going to show you a clip of that video, and they're not really talking about this resource at that moment that I'm going to show you. But anyway, the person who put it up there, also a communications professor, and she said she goes to this site a lot, Media Bias Fact Check. And it rates it. See that, the line, the arrows? It rates it from extreme, left, center, least biased, right, center, right, extreme. And again, it's this, and it's really for people that are in the news business and the communications business, but anybody can use it. The one that I thought was interesting is this BS detector. That's a plugin for your browser. So it's free when you're doing searching, and if you have this BS detector as a plugin, then you can click on that and it'll tell you if the story's real or not. This is another one that is new that I just discovered, and I think it's really cool. So I want to show you the video. It's called Hoaxy. So what it does is it's a visualization tool, shows the path of fake news as it spreads. So remember that, don't share, don't share. This is what could happen. So let's take a quick look at this one.
Welcome to Hoaxy. Hoaxy is a public tool for visualizing the spread of fact-checking and claims on social media. You can use it a bit like Google. Let's say you want to learn more about the claim that an asteroid has been spotted and will hit the Earth and destroy civilization. First, type in asteroid, then hit search. This brings up a list of claims and fact checks that could be relevant to them. You can click on the text to go directly to them, but let's focus on visualizing them for now. So click on the check boxes of the stories you want to show up in your visualization. And then click the Visualize button. Here you can see how the fact checks and claims you've selected have spread over time and how they're spreading. You can zoom in on areas of interest and even click on Twitter users to find more information about what they tweeted and who retweeted it. Thanks for trying out Hoaxy. We hope you find it useful.
Hoaxy helps you know how things are spreading. More resources for evaluating fake news. And these are new resources that I share a lot with the teachers. Because remember, they're teaching students in the classroom setting, and there's some really solid, good resources out there for teachers. Lesson plans, ideas, case studies, even digital posters. So the Digital Resource Center at Centers for News Literacy, again, none of these sites are new. They've been around, especially that one, for a while, but people forget. You know, they were, well, we were good for literacy, news literacy, but now with the rise of fake news, these are vital sites. Newseum, Ed, this is a direct link. There's a Newseum in Washington, D.C. Do you know that museum? Yeah. Well, there's a whole section of their website that's just education materials, great lesson plans for teachers. And I was going to bring a poster. Actually, I forgot to bring it because it was talking about when I knew I wasn't going to have the time to go into looking at fake websites. But they have posters for teachers that they can put up on their classroom for this, and they'll send them to you. Really, really good things. 10 questions for fake news detection. That's a digital poster. And if I were to click on it, you would see it, but again, it would be hard to read this way. But teachers can print it out, filled with red flags. I mentioned reverse, or the video actually mentioned reverse image search. And we're going to talk a little bit about images, because images are powerful. TinEye is a reverse image search tool. And this little guy that's here, robot-looking guy, that's their symbol. So we're going to look at TinEye, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Google reverse image search. So, real picture of Harvey rescue, Harvey the hurricane time, rescue. First appeared on CNN's website, and then appeared on social media, this one. Right? Same picture. What's the difference? It's been photoshopped. So I used TinEye to search, and when you use TinEye, and how would you do that? So you would isolate this picture. You would right-click on it to get the URL of that picture. You go to TinEye, you paste the URL into that, and it brings up a list of stories, or a list, of where this picture and the real picture showed up. So one of the first ones on that list was Snopes. Remember Snopes? We talked about that. And if I clicked on this URL, it would take you to what you would find on Snopes.com /Trump-Raft-Harvey. And when you go to their site, not only is that picture there, but the real picture is there. So you have the two pictures together side by side, and then there's a little video about these pictures and a story about it. So you really get a lot of information about, in this case, a fake picture. And this is what it looks like. There were 98 results. And here are the two little pictures side by side. But look at how many times the search has happened. And then again, if the, I didn't do a screenshot of the actual Snopes article, but if I did, that would be as one of the list. You would click on that link and it would bring you to it. Oh, actually I did. Okay, here we go. So here it is. So here's the Snopes fake pic. And that's, again, the URL to it. And this is what you would see on TinEye. And then you would know to go and click on this story. Good tool to know? Here's another picture. Now, in this case, it's a real picture. But when it was shared out on social media, it was shared out that the Obamas, notice the whole family's there, serving people during Hurricane Harvey. Wrong. So the picture's real in this case, but it didn't happen then. It happened at Thanksgiving 2015 in Washington, D.C. Again, the way you find out, you isolate the picture, you right-click, you get the URL, you go to a place like TinEye, and things are going to come up. I selected this one to talk a little bit about Google reverse image search. The way you could find out and use, there's a couple ways. If you Google, how many people use Google? Okay. And you know at the top you do a Google search, and at the top it says news, images, videos, so forth. And if you click on the word images, it's going to bring up a whole bunch of images or whatever you search for. That's one way. Or you could go directly to images.google.com. It'll bring you to that same idea. You type in what you're looking for. So with this whole egg recall thing, I thought, let me try. And a ton of pictures of eggs showed up. And the thing is, when you, and I don't know if you've noticed this, when you go to a Google image and you start to just put your cursor over it, it'll pop up, like in this case with this picture, when I put it in, maybe it was 3 days ago. And it'll let you know that that's a really current picture, that this was in the news 3 days ago. Again, I would isolate it. If I click on the image, if I just click on the image, it's going to bring me to the site that that image came from. So I can look at it that way. I can go visit the site. I can look at the article, whatever it is. I can choose to gives me choices. Again, if I want to just isolate it, I would click on it, right-click, get the URL. So reverse image search help. This is what you would find if you go to their help section. You're going to see similar images. Remember, I said I saw a whole lot of eggs. Sites that include the image, other sizes of the image you search for, and so forth. There's something called reverse.photos, which is for mobile devices. Again, a free app. If you want to put it on your mobile device, you can get a lot of information about images. So back to the teachers. Another list I share with them is multimedia resources, and this list should be twice its size by now. I just cut it down for this presentation. There's a lot of information out there in multimedia. PBS, NewsHour, I really like this particular one. TED Talks, you familiar with TED Talks? Tons of stuff out on TED Talk. TED Ed is a resource I point teachers to because it's animated and it's a nice way to share information in a classroom. So how to choose your news, how false news can spread, 2 little animations just on that. And then there's the podcast. So another piece that I do with teachers, it's another whole different course, on differentiating instruction. So whatever course I teach, I try to put in other ways that teachers can look and share information with students, print format, visual format, and audio. And there's tons of podcasts, and NPR 1A has some really good ones. So more quotes from teachers, this time about social media. Facebook. This could be a 2-hour presentation, guys, but I didn't go there. We're not talking that side of it. So, Facebook. Fake news and the spreading of half-truths, rampant on social media. And I sort of thought this was funny, this quote when the teacher puts, not just among teens. Teens tend not to use Facebook. It's older people who use Facebook. They use things like Snapchat. That's there and then not there, but it really never goes away. They just think it does. The hard part is again, keeping their students to be able to understand the social media and network, and the internet up to date. They would love not only to understand, but also harness the power of social media and turn it into a learning tool. And I like this quote from this teacher: fake news is just the tip of the iceberg. Another quote on social media is the attempt to curtail the amount of fake news that is spread on their platform. And why I said this could have been another whole hour presentation is because what have we been hearing the last couple of weeks, especially? We heard it, and now we heard it again and again of how fake news was spread through Facebook. And this teacher wrote that he was guilty of doing this because he thought it was funny, and his friends thought it was funny, and they share the little, cartoon or video or whatever. But he realizes that sometimes the funny stuff can be fake. So there's this fine line between the joke, the satire, and pure fake. The last time the course ran, which was, when did it run? December into January. One of the teachers who was taking the online course, Internet for Educators, shared this link when I asked them to reflect. And this is a friend of hers, Linda Beck. And she did a TEDx talk in Harrisburg, and she's a professional communicator. And her topic was fact-checking in a fast-paced, social media-driven world. Now, her talk's about 16 minutes, so we're not going to look at all that. But there's a little clip on here that I chose where she's talking about Facebook, social media, and algorithms.
Said that now 29% of newspaper revenue comes from online sources like advertising and subscriptions. And that number is growing. Even Penn Live, our local-based news organization, reports that 50% of their revenue comes from online sources because they made the decision a few years ago to move more onto a social media platform. Now let's also talk about the online impact a little bit more, and hopefully you'll see why I chose to focus on social media. Pew Research also says that in the last year, 90% of Americans say that they have accessed news via a digital device. 40 to 45% of Americans say they often use a mobile device like a tablet or a phone to get their news. And that number is growing even among adults over age 60. Now, Cathy O'Neil, author of Weapons of Mass Destruction, says, the problem with getting our news this way is that we begin to lose the contextualization of information. So something from a legitimate news site like the New York Times plays in our brain the same way as something from The Onion, a parody site, or something from a truly fake news site. Furthermore, O'Neil goes on to say, Facebook does not optimize for truth or for content. It optimizes for likes and shares. And that optimization comes to us courtesy of algorithms. Now, I don't have a lot of time to get into algorithms, but suffice it to say that algorithms pretty much drive everything we see on social media. And the data shows that we are really only shown about 30% of what we could see. And that's generally based on our likes, our comments, and our shares. So while we think that we're seeing everything that our neighbor posted, the reality is that we're seeing targeting courtesy of algorithms. Targeting is also why, if you just did a search for sneakers, what are you going to see online? More sneakers.
That's one of my husband's major complaints with the internet. I search for blah, 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 and next thing I know, there's an ad for the blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, the algorithm. But notice what she said. Likes, shares, comments. So if you have a Facebook account, it's okay to share if you know what you're sharing is not fake. More quotes from real educators about social media. Spreads like wildfire. It's very easy. Read a post, click and share. Don't necessarily read the whole thing. Consider the source and the reliability. And another one said, be much more careful about what you like and share, and continue to be diligent. So all of that is enough to give people outrage fatigue. But now there's a new technology that's coming down the road. It's actually not so much that it's new, it's just a lot more sophisticated. You know the old movies, especially the ones that, what were they called? The spaghetti western ones, you know, made over in Italy, and then you had the American actor, and then they dub in the person speaking, and you see it's out of sync and all that, right? Well, that's getting much more sophisticated. And you knew that that voice wasn't the actor who was speaking in Italian, coming out with American words. It was, you know, somebody else. Everybody knew. But you went along with it. It was a nice movie, so forth. But now they take the real person's voice, slice it up, put it back together, and present the message. Very sophisticated and sort of scary. So these two podcasts, notice the dates. I put the dates up because they're very recent. Spoke about this. Technologies that create fake audio and video are quickly evolving. It's still, I'm going to show you a clip, and you're going to see it's still a little off, but it's getting better and better all the time. And technology just is fast. It's quick, quick, quick. Can you believe your own ears? With new fake news, tech, not necessarily. So they were discussing the fake audio and the video. And if you have a chance, and if you go to NPR podcasts and you look for these type things, even if you just put in fake audio, it'll come up. Things will come up for you to listen to. I was going to do a little experiment, but since we're being videotaped here, I might not do it that way. I was going to have you close your eyes and tell me who you hear, but we're going to show you instead, because you would guess right away. But listen to the words. And notice the caption here is the future of fake news.
Has been modified from its original version. It has been formatted to fit this screen, and it never happened.
On the back end now of my presidency, now that it's almost completed, although there are all kinds of issues that I care about, the single most important thing I can do is play golf. Because our parties have moved further and further apart, and it's harder and harder to find common ground. So, when I said in 2004 that there were no red states or blue states, they're the United States of America, I was wrong. On the back end now of my presidency, now that it's almost completed, although there are all kinds of issues that I care about, the single most important thing I can do is play golf. Because our parties have moved further and further apart, and it's harder and harder to find common ground. So, when I said in 2004 that there were no red states or blue states, they're the United States of America, I was wrong.
So I want to go back a minute to the beginning of this.
From its original version, it has been formatted to fit this screen, and it never happened.
On the back end now of my presidency, now that it's almost completed, although there are all kinds of issues that I care about.
So you see, I saw people saying, well, you could see his lips, you could see his lips. But if you had closed your eyes, you wouldn't see that. But what would you hear? You would have heard his voice. And what was one of the lines? One of the most important things he could do was play golf. And we know he would have put it that way, but obviously, over the course of his presidency, I'm sure he used the word golf, used the word play, used the word whatever. And then, I don't know if you noticed as the video went on, you saw the person's face who was actually saying those words, but it was manipulated to fit, and again, to put with Obama's voice. Scary, right? The bad news is I have nothing to show you of where to go to see if that's fake or not. I mean, you could see it was fake, and if you hear it with that silly commentary, you're going to realize it's fake. But if it's not a silly commentary, and you don't see it, and the technology, and that technology is off, and that technology, by the way, has been around for a little while. Again, I used it with teachers and kids, and something called Blabberize, where you get an animal to talk, and kids love it, and everybody's happy. And there's good reasons for this kind of technology, but it's getting much more sophisticated. So you have to be aware that it's just out there. And listen to the podcasts and hear more. So final quotes about fake news. On top of that whole critical thinking skills that students and all of us really need to know to discern if something is fake news, and not just read and be done. But the sad part, the other quote is, there's no easy solution. So having questions and doubts is a good thing to be that critical consumer of the internet and other media. Thank you. You want me to take questions, or do we have time for that? Or
Any questions? Good? Great.
Yes, 312 and 9.
There's one thing before I say thank you. Jordan Peele, who's a comedian but also a movie director from Get Out, did one of these voiceovers for the president, but he impersonated him, and it was almost scary to me of how authentic it was. Like, it was just so. As you mentioned, I think that's the next wave, coming, because people don't want to read. So if they can see it on a video, that's where they're going to go. Yeah, it's just something. I remember when I was younger, my parents always said, "Make sure you read the news, no matter what you do in life." And now, I'm trying. It's tough to decipher. But one of the things that I really is just. You mentioned Facebook. I'm 45, and my nephews and nieces don't even use Facebook anymore. So the fake news is not something we can dump off on another generation, whether that's younger or older. It really is, all generations are almost hook, line, and sinker on it. They're just not making that next step. But thank you very much for coming in. We certainly appreciate it. And thank you for coming out. Again, there is coffee, refreshments outside, so please, we can continue the conversation outside the lobby.
Exactly.